Hello everyone, Tactical Edge here. Today we have a battle best of 3 between nations. On the green side we have the UK team and on the red side we have the German team. The battles and the tournament itself are played a while back, but I only got time recently to cast the game, so we are on the rollback version and checking out what kind of battles will this Clash of Nations bring us. In this battle here, I'm playing as the Ogre Kingdoms versus Calamity, a very good player, playing as the Vampire Coast. Just judging from the faction choice, seems like I might be at a bit of a disadvantage with the Vampire Coast skirmishing aerial firepower being something hard to counter for me. But let's see if I can overcome the Vampire Coast firepower. On the front line, we have some Nobbler Trappers and regular Nobblers. Nobbler Trappers Vanguard deployed to screen away possible aerial skirmishers, and then behind them a ton of Saber-Tusk packs, providing a lot of mobility to jump onto the Vampire Coast backline. A line of Ogre Bulls and Iron Guts trying to go as wide as possible and just to overload the Vampire Coast defenses and get into the backline. For the leadership, Tyrant supported by a Firebelly with Burning Head and Flaming Sword of Ruin. That's it for the army builds for the Ogre Kingdoms. On the other side, for the Vampire Coast, a classic coast box, a ton of deckhand mobs and polearm mobs surrounding a missile core of bombers and one black spot. They are also supported by a single carronade and a bunch of monstrous units, including Animated Hulks and the Lamprey's Revenge, and another polearm mob guarding the carronade and the missile backline in the skies. A few units of deck droppers with handguns with their long range and armor piercing firepower. It would definitely be quite a bit of threat to my army that lacks missile capacity to counteract aerial skirmishers. Anyways, let's get the battle started. And almost forgot about the leadership of the Vampire Coast, Celestra Direfin coming in with a very full spell kit. Fog of the Dam, Spiteful Shot to add more missile damage. Quite an interesting spell choice. And then Tide Call for the AoE damage to clear out Nobblers, Ghost of the Past for the Damned Knight's Errant Summon, Song of Enthronement to slow down enemy melee push, mostly to reduce their speed of cutting through enemy troops. Now over here, the Carronade's already firing from afar, trying to work down my Iron Guts, while the handgun deck droppers are just hanging back for now. Seeing that the Saber-Tusk packs are moving up, they are also approaching my formation. Now they are aiming down at the Saber-Tusk, slowly working the way through them, while my Nobbler Trappers will be counter-firing. However, these kind of flying models means that it is actually quite hard for regular missiles to hit them. Of course, the sheer amount of missiles will still be quite noticeable in terms of the damage impact. The deck droppers over here taking quite a bit of damage already are forced to pull back, though at the same time the Iron Guts are getting annihilated by the Carronade. Some of my Nobblers and the Ogre Bulls are jumping into the front line, but as you can see here, the black spots are lighting up these Ogre Bulls. Even the bombers are chugging in their explosives onto my Ogre Bulls, quickly working through their HP. The Nobblers are also taking a ton of damage from the explosions, and my god, that is a very big damage from the Tide Call, plus the bombers as well, and the Nobblers have been pushed back. Some of the Ogre Bulls are trying to get into the backline and start beating down the bombers, but as you can see, they're taking a lot of Overwatch fire from the bombers and the black spots. The Carronades are still firing, routing off my Iron Guts on the far side, who have been routed once already, while more Nobblers trying to push into the Vampire Coast box here. A little bit of a Burning Head to burn through some of those zombie chaff. I don't think that's gonna even matter here, as I do not have frontline to break through. My single entities are fighting in the spot here, but there are some Animated Hulks very ready to just countercharge and pin down my characters. Black spots have been firing the whole time, bombers also very secured at the back line there, while the Saber-Tusk packs are struggling to find a target to engage. Doesn't really want to circle all the way around to the back there, since there are some Crabs and Animated Hulks that were ready to countercharge them, but now they're just going through the gaps and jumping on the bomber mobs, trying to silence these Vampire Coast missiles. But at this point, we can already see that the Vampire Coast army already have an advantage in balance of power. There are still some Nobbler Trappers on the far side, but they can't really turn the tide against all these Vampire Coast units. Yeah, this is pretty much going downhill from team here. I am most certainly fighting an uphill battle on this map, and figuratively and physically. And yeah, I'm just failing to shut down the enemy aerial skirmishers. The Nobblers just don't have enough range to deal with the deck droppers, and the Damp Knight's Errant Summon are more than enough to just run through my missile backline. Not that it's much of a backline anyways. More units piling onto the bomber mobs, and my characters are still holding, getting a bit of a damage boost from the Flaming Sword of Ruin, but they are just killing a couple units here, and that's still not helping against the black spots, just opening fire at whatever targets they can find. The Saber-Tusk packs definitely need to jump into combat at some point soon, while the gunbats in the skies keep shooting away at my Ogre Bulls. I definitely misplayed a bit of my Saber-Tusk, though, kind of just leaving there idle for too long, though unfortunately it's not like there are any good targets for them to fight other than the bomber mobs. Even nearby Vampire Coast monsters can easily screen them away. The aerial skirmishers are pretty much healthy and free to just poke away at the rest of my army. I'm just gonna fast forward here as the Tyrant is getting shot to pieces by the gun bats and the gun crabs. We'll quickly go through the army performances and then we'll check out the next battle. The army performances was definitely pretty poor on my end, definitely misplaying a lot of those Saber-Tusk packs, though they don't really have good targets to fight throughout the whole game. Maybe they can jump onto the backline, but then again, there's a lot of zombie monsters and infantry to counteract these threats. Most importantly, they can't deal with the gun bats in the skies, and the gun bats are just free to keep shooting away at all my important targets and cutting them down over time, while the Vampire Coast here having a pretty good time just sitting in the skies and keep shooting at my unit, while the bombers also did some pretty good job clearing out Nobblers, but most importantly the black spots and the Carronade, earning a ton of value with their precision firepower. So yeah, a pretty brutal defeat for me, and definitely a brilliant faction pick from Calamity, really understanding the weaknesses of the Ogre Kingdoms. And yeah, that's it for the first battle. Now let's jump into the second one. The second battle was between Borgash, or otherwise known as Naunish, playing as the Chaos Dwarfs as part of the UK team, versus the Beastmen played by Salinator on the German team. One bottom tier faction versus one of the top tier factions, and let's see what kind of battle will they bring to us. For the Chaos Dwarf army build, a little bit of a box build here. A couple of Death Shrieker rocket launchers as the core of the army, surrounded by a ton of infantry, Chaos Dwarf warriors, goblin laborers, a couple blunderbusses, and a single fire glaive, guarded by a Bull Center Render as well, providing some anti-large capabilities. While leading the army, we have the Sorcerer Prophet of Death with Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna, and one Vanguard deployed unit as well, the Hobgoblin with Raiders with Spears. On the other side of the battlefield for the Beastmen, a front line of Angor Spears mixed in with two Pestigors actually, and supported by a ton of mobility, a couple Zandagors with their armor piercing and siege barrier, and 3 units of Senegals with throwing axes for their AP missile, plus a Butchers of Kalgengard as a backbone of the rather fragile infantry line. There's also a single Jabberslave to use the charge animation and mass to plow through those Chaos Dwarf and Labor infantry. In disguise, leading the army, Malagor the Dark Omen with only Flock of Doom. That's it for the army builds. Now let's just get the battle started. The Sorcerer Prophet of Death already approaching that Beastman formation, dropping those grenades. The grenade launcher slowly chipping away the health of some of these Angor Spears. Spirit Leech on to Malagor the Dark Omen as well, draining away his health. And on top of that, if I remember correctly, the Death Shrieker rocket launchers will start firing at the closest target. Oh, Malagor the Dark Omen trying to use an overcast Flock of Doom, doing some pretty nice damage to the Infernal God and Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, but he himself took quite a bit of miscast damage, so rather unfortunate there. Now the Death Shrieker rocket launchers will be firing away, aiming at Malagor the Dark Omen. Probably not the greatest target, because as a foot character, he is extremely small, and he is quite fast as well at 121 speed after getting buffed up by the Primal Fury. So a lot of speed and not a lot of surface area, so a very hard moving target to land hits on. And then those Death Shrieker rocket launcher shots are just struggling to connect with the Beastman Lord. Instead, they are now firing at the Senegals with throwing axes. Probably not the best way to target. Instead, probably should have just turned into Scattershot and tried to rain down fire onto the Senegals. And a better target perhaps for the Death Streaker rocket launchers would be these Butchers of Kalkengard. At the same time, unfortunately, it seems like the defenses of the Chaos Dwarves had a bit of a gap, allowing one of the Xanagors to just slam in and cut through a ton of health of these Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, and Selenonator really trying to do those cycle charges, teasing the Chaos Dwarf formations a bit, and because the gaps of the formation, one of the Pestigors were able to just run through between units and get on top of one of the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses. Also, the Xanagors of Tinge are engaging as well. Death Streaker continues to fire, but unfortunately still missing and unable to hit Malagor the Dark Omen. Spirit Leech is doing most of the damage for now, but the front line of the Chaos Dwarf is in a big trouble. As the Jeopard's Life slams in, there's no mass for the Chaos Dwarf to stop this lumbering monster, and terror takes over the entire section of this front line. The only thing that's holding are pretty much the more elite Chaos Dwarf warriors, but Butchers are in the fray. Their AP damage will be hacking away at the Chaos Dwarf tin cans, plus they do have some infantry support from the Angor Spearman herd. Sorcerer Prophet of Death busy chasing off those throwing axes, but more throwing axes are flooding in and aiming those AP fire at the massive monster. And on top of that, the Jabber's Life is in the backline tying down the Infernal God. One of the blunderbusses has rallied, but Butchers are in and terrified at them instantly. Death Streaker rocket launchers are still too busy trying to fire at Malagor the Dark Omen instead of the optimal targets. I believe the Butchers of Kalkengard would be the best target for these artillery pieces. They have fire damage, they have anti-launch, which makes them great against Butchers of Kalkengard with their fire weaknesses. Unfortunately, those rocket launchers are still going for some other targets for now, not doing the most damage, and now the Xanagors of Tinge are in the back line, nothing to protect them, as the Bull Center Enders are too busy charging into the Butchers of Kalkengard, being surrounded by spears, and these elite Minotaurs, they are getting dragged down in melee combat, while the Death Shriekers are left to the mercy of the Pestigors and the Xanagors, which, well, these are beastmen, so they don't really understand the concept of mercy. And yeah, the Death Streaker rocket launcher over here has been terrified away. These one just got hacked down by the Pestigors, while the Beastman rush is in full swing. All the units are flooding in throwing axes, chugging into the nearest target, like these Death Streaker rocket launcher and the Sorcerer Prophet of Death. Two very big targets, easy for those throwing axes to hit. Butchers of Kalkengard still having 15 unit models left, while Sorcerer Prophet of Death is getting lower and lower in health. Army losses hit, and that shall be a resounding Beastman victory. GG to both players, and the Germans scored another win. I do think that Borgash definitely made a mistake in using the Death Streaker rocket launcher in shooting Malagor instead of aiming at the easier targets and definitely harder to dodge targets. The Butchers of Kalkengard or even the Jabber's Life would be good too, but alas, the Death Streaker rocket launchers were mostly wasted and unable to achieve their potential here, while the rest of the Chaos Dwarf army just got ran over by the sheer amount of Beastmen melee power. Only the Spirit Leech was really doing any damage, but otherwise the Beastmen had a really good time rushing down, running over all those Chaos Dwarf defenses. Those laborers cannot stand up to the rush of a ton of Centaurs, even if they are the Throwing Axis variant. And the Pestigors got into the backline, cutting through those blunderbusses, and Death Streaker rocket launchers got a ton of value as well. Very good performance from Beastmen, being one of the top tier factions in the current meta, and well, the Chaos Dwarfs will just have to keep crying at D tier in their dark fortresses. We do have a third battle for the best of 3, but we'll be casting it in a separate video. It is very close and a rather long one, so I tried incorporating it into a single video with the other 2 battles, but that made the video half-hour long. That's why we'll be showing it in a separate video in a couple of days. So if you want to see more multiplayer content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and keep an eye out for new videos. That's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Itch, signing out.